Back in 2008, I worked nights at a small town grocery store for about 8 months. It wasn't glamorous. The store closed at 11 p.m., and that's when I'd clock in. By then, the fluorescent lights felt harsher, the aisles longer, and the whole place had this hollow echo to it that didn't exist during the day. But I didn't mind it at first. I'd throw my headphones in, turn on a podcast or some music, and just move aisle by aisle. I would mop and restock, take out the trash, and then repeat it all over again. There was something peaceful about being alone in the building that was usually full of noise. Most of the nights were predictable. That night started the same way. The last customers shuffled out a few minutes before close. The manager locked the front doors, gave me a quick nod, and headed out. By 11:15, it was just me and the hum of refrigeration units. I was halfway through dry goods when I noticed it. A loaf of bread sitting in the middle of the aisle. Not fallen near the shelf, not tilted off the edge, just placed there, dead center. I paused and pulled one earbud out. I thought to myself that was weird. Maybe a customer dropped it right before close and no one noticed. I mean, it happens. I shrugged, I went and picked it up and slid it back into its spot on the shelf. A few minutes later, I had completely forgotten about it. As I was wiping down the freezer doors near the back, I realized I really had to use the bathroom. I cut through the same aisle on my way there. That's when I noticed it and stopped. The same loaf of bread was on the floor again. Same aisle, in the same spot, right in the middle. This time my stomach tightened. I stood there longer than I needed to, just staring at it. The store was silent, except for the faint buzz overhead. I pulled both earbuds out and listened. I heard nothing. No footsteps, no carts rolling, no doors opening or closing. I walked over slowly and picked it up. The plastic crinkled loudly in my hand. I checked the shelf. The spot where I'd placed it earlier was empty. I put it back again, pressing it firmly into place. I muttered to myself to get a grip. I thought maybe I was losing it. Then I turned around and headed to the bathroom. The employee restroom was in the back near the storage area. There was one door. Inside were 2 stalls. The bathroom had old tile floors that echoed with every step. I locked the main bathroom door behind me like I always did. It was just a habit. I stepped into a stall and sat down, trying to shake the feeling crawling up my spine. I told myself it was just my imagination. I was mid-thought when I heard it. The bathroom door opening. My entire body went rigid. I knew that I had locked it. I held my breath and listened. The door creaked shut behind whoever had just come in. Then there was silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy. My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure whoever was out there could hear it. Maybe the manager came back for something, I thought to myself. Maybe I didn't lock it. Then I heard a voice. "I know you're in here." Every ounce of blood drained from my face. I didn't recognize the voice. I forced myself to speak. "You need to leave. Right now. I'm calling the police." There was a pause. Then a soft laugh. It wasn't loud or manic, just amused. Footsteps shuffled across the tile. They stopped right outside my stall door. I stared at the crack between the door and the frame, and then I saw it. An eye, peering through, watching me. I jumped up so fast I nearly slipped. I fumbled with the latch, swung the stall door open as hard as I could, and slammed it into whoever was standing out there. He stumbled backward and hit the wall with a grunt. I didn't wait to see his face. I bolted past him, out of the bathroom and into the back hallway. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone as I was dialing 911. Before the operator could even speak, I said, "There's someone in the store. He's not supposed to be here. I need officers now." I sprinted to the front entrance. The doors were still locked from the inside. I fumbled with my keys, unlocked them, and burst out into the cold parking lot. I didn't stop running until I was under the streetlight near the edge of the lot. I kept looking back at the dark glass storefront, half expecting to see someone standing there watching me. The police arrived within minutes. 2 officers went inside while I stood outside trying to steady my breathing. It felt like forever before they came back out. Between them was a man in dirty, layered clothing. His hair was matted, his face was thin and pale. He had his hands cuffed behind his back. He looked at me as they walked him past, and I'll never forget this. He smiled, and then he laughed. That same quiet laugh that I heard in the bathroom. One of the officers told me they found him hiding in the supply closet in the back room. They said he'd probably slipped in before close and waited. That's when it hit me. I thought about the bread that was placed in the aisle, not dropped, placed, like he wanted me to notice, like he wanted me to know that he was there. After that night, the store never felt empty again. Every hum of the lights, every creak of the shelves, every misplaced item made my skin crawl. I put in my 2 weeks the next morning after telling my manager everything. He tried to reassure me, but I couldn't shake the feeling, because the part that still bothers me the most is that he knew exactly where I was, and he was inside the entire time. I worked nights as a security guard at a cemetery just outside of town. It wasn't as dramatic as it sounds. Most nights were quiet, peaceful even. The only real trouble I ever dealt with was teenagers hopping the fence to drink or mess around after dark. I'd shine a flashlight at them, tell them to get lost, and that was usually the end of it. My shift started at 10 p.m. I'd clock in, grab my flashlight, do a full sweep of the grounds to make sure no one was lingering past closing. The cemetery sat on a few acres. There were rows of headstones, a handful of old oak trees, and a small mausoleum toward the back corner. There was also a small headquarters building near the entrance. Inside were monitors that displayed live feeds from security cameras positioned throughout the cemetery. That's where I spent most of my time between patrols. That night started like any other. I did my first sweep just after clocking in. The air was cool and still. There was no wind, no noise except my boots crunching softly on gravel paths. Everything looked normal. I went back inside around 11, locked the door, and sat down with a snack while glancing at the monitors. That's when I saw something. Out of the corner of my eye, something moved on one of the screens. I turned my head slowly. It was on camera 6, which covered the east section near some older headstones. At first I figured it was an animal, maybe a deer cutting through the rows. That wasn't uncommon, but when I leaned closer, I saw a person. They were walking slowly between the graves. My heart began to beat a little faster. I've dealt with trespassers before, but something about this one felt different. The person was dressed head to toe in a dark cloak. He had a hood pulled low over his head, and in one hand they carried what looked like a black bag. In the other, something metallic caught the faint light. It looked like a blade. I leaned closer to the monitor. It was a knife. I swallowed hard and noted the section. It was over on the east side, 3rd row back from the large oak tree. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. The air immediately felt colder. It was still, the kind of stillness where even the insects seemed to hold their breath. I made my way down the gravel path toward the east section, scanning the rows of headstones with my light. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating names and dates etched in the stone. As I approached the area where I'd seen the figure on camera, there was no one there. Just grass and headstones, trees swaying slightly in the faint breeze. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I slowly turned in a circle, sweeping my flashlight across the area, and that's when I saw it. In the distance, behind a large headstone near the old oak tree, there was a flicker of light, like a candle. I started walking toward it, my boots softer now against the grass. As I got closer to the light, I thought I heard something. It was a voice. It was low and murmuring. It sounded to me like it was chanting, but the chants, they weren't English, at least not anything I recognized. I moved slower, trying to control my breathing. I was about 10 yards away now, and the flickering light was clearer. It was definitely coming from candles. And the voice, it was louder. It was steady and rhythmic. I crept to the side of the large headstone and leaned just enough to see around it. What I saw made my stomach drop. The cloaked figure was kneeling on the ground. In front of him, painted in red on the cement footing of the headstone, was a pentagram. There were candles surrounding it in a circle, and a dagger lay at the man's knees. His chanting grew louder. My breath caught my throat, and I made a mistake. I gasped. The chanting stopped instantly, and the figure's head snapped up. Even in the dim candlelight, I could see his face. It was pale and thin. His eyes were dark and cold. He stared directly at me and smiled. "You're just in time for the ceremony," he said calmly. My voice came out shakier than I meant it to. I told him the cemetery was closed and he needed to leave. The smile faded from his face and his eyes hardened. I told him again to leave, this time a little bit louder. His expression shifted into something darker. Slowly, he reached down and picked up the dagger that was at his knees. He then looked up again and said, "I do need a sacrifice for my ceremony." He began to stand, and something inside me snapped. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I sprinted down the path, nearly slipping on the gravel. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. I reached the headquarters buildings, threw the door open, and slammed it shut behind me, locking it as fast as I could. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at the door, waiting for a pounding, for footsteps, for something. But nothing came. I rushed over to the monitors. The camera directly outside the headquarters showed an empty hallway. There was no cloaked man, no movement. I flipped through every camera. There was nothing. When I got to camera 6, the east section where I'd seen him kneeling, there was nothing there. I didn't see any candles or a pentagram or a figure. Just grass and headstones sitting quietly in the dark. I leaned closer to the screen. The cement footing of the headstone was clean. There were no red markings. It was like nothing had ever been there. I sat back in my chair, trying to steady my breathing. I thought to myself that maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was just tired and overworked, and my mind was running wild. I stayed inside for the rest of my shift. Every so often I checked the monitors again, but there was nothing. No movement, no figure. When 6 a.m. finally came, the sky lightened to a dull gray, and my shift was finally over. I grabbed my keys and walked to the front door of the headquarters. I unlocked it and pulled it open, and I froze. Sitting directly in front of the door, centered on the concrete steps, was a single candle. There was wax that had slightly melted down one side. I stared at it for a long time. That's when I knew I hadn't imagined him, and I knew I hadn't imagined the candles because I hadn't brought one with me, and I definitely hadn't left one at the front door.